We finally got a release date for Dragon's Dogma 2, March 22nd, 2024. And I'm really looking forward to it because while it might look like a standard open world action RPG, there is way more going on. The story premise starts relatively simple. You are an arisen, someone whose heart has been stolen by a dragon, and now your goal is to challenge and kill that dragon. And while it's a single player game, you are never actually alone as you fight alongside AI controlled pawns that can help you in both combat and exploration, with the sequel now adding some awesome new features too that I want to go over. There's also an impactful day and night cycle where night times are super dark and spawn unique and very dangerous monsters, and some of the larger dangerous creatures in the game can actually be climbed so you can hit their weak spots and bring them to the ground. Combat seems super dynamic, not only because you can climb enemies but also because you can make use of your environment. You can cut down a bridge to drop approaching enemies into the ravine below, or blow up a dam and flood the arena with water enough to topple even a bigger monster. And from previews, I get the impression that these encounters are super dynamic too. So where one player was able to make it to town safely, another was ambushed by a dangerous griffin on the way there. Enemies can also fight among themselves, so you can find that same griffin hunting for other prey, and more cunning ones are also able to set up traps and ambushes to catch you by surprise. And while it might look similar to the first game in terms of gameplay, combat has also been reworked with new mechanics like finishers that allow you to instantly kill low health enemies by hitting them with a heavy attack. Your abilities in combat are determined by your class, or vocations as the game calls them, and there are a ton of these to pick from, but you are never locked to a single one as you can swap yours out at any point in your playthrough at locations known as vocation guilds. So when you create your character, you can pick between a fighter, an archer, a mage, and a thief. These are pretty self-explanatory, with fighters using a sword and shield, allowing them to block and parry incoming attacks, archers using a bow and arrow, giving them an advantage against airborne targets. Thieves are quick dual dagger wielding fighters that can use a dodge called Swift Step to quickly reposition, and mages have access to heals, buffs, and powerful elemental spells that take longer to charge depending on the power of the spell. And while you can switch them out, each vocation needs to be leveled individually, but this will also unlock new skills and bonuses. So even the non-magic wielding classes gain access to a wide range of attacks, also thanks to the 4 active skills you have access to that of course also depend on your vocation. And then as you progress, you'll be unlocking new vocations like the massive sword wielding warrior, or some cool hybrid classes like the mystic spearhand who uses a duo spear and magic, and the magic archer who, you guessed it, uses a bow and magic. And the new gameplay actually gave us a look at a new vocation for Dragon's Dogma 2, the trickster. This class uses a sensor as a weapon and is a master of illusions that they can use for some very creative crowd control. You can create illusory walls or platforms to control the battlefield, trick enemies into fighting each other, or even summon the image of a dragon to scare a griffin out of the sky. It also has the ability to temporarily buff its party members, so the trickster seems like a very versatile and, more importantly, super fun class to play. And I'm already having a hard time picking a favorite, but again, you can easily try each vocation in a single playthrough. But you will definitely need the powerful abilities granted by these vocations to defeat the many unique monsters you are up against. There are tons of different enemies in Dragon's Dogma 2, from your regular goblins and bandits to griffins and minotaurs. Some of these are returning from the first game, but the new gameplay also showed some really impressive looking newcomers. The Medusa is one of them, so Odyssey fans rejoice as we get to fight another petrifying snake lady in this game. But even more impressive is the massive Talos boss that needs to be taken down with siege weapons and by climbing on its body to destroy weak points, Shadow of the Colossus style. Again, that is another one of Dragon's Dogma's unique features, as you can climb on many of the larger creatures to destroy weak spots and bring them to their knees. Finally, the ghastly Dullahan also looks like a real nasty piece of work with an attack that seems to drain you of your health. But yeah, enemy variety is of course super important in open world RPGs, and from what I've seen so far, Capcom have nailed it. And there are more unique features and new info to discuss. Of course, if you liked the video so far, be sure to leave a like and subscribe as well to not miss our next Dragon's Dogma video. So while picking your vocation is certainly important, there's also a lot of depth to be found in character creation. And not just because you can tweak every individual aspect of your face and body, but also because it impacts how your character plays. As reported by YouTube channel ESO, stats like height, weight, and stature impact your in-game abilities like run speed, weapon reach, or how far you are able to throw things. Which, yeah, makes sense that a taller character has more reach with a sword than a short one. And this doesn't just apply to you, but to your pawn as well. Because you have one main pawn that you can create and customize yourself, while the other two in your party are support pawns and are selected from a list of pawns created by other players. And when, for instance, you hire my pawn and go on a quest that I haven't done yet, they will gain knowledge of that quest and use it to help me out when I eventually go do that mission. So if I then get close to a key location, they will point it out, and if they've discovered the weakness of a boss, they will shout it out during a fight. And pawns can even earn unique skills that can assist you during quests. Although it's unclear how they gain these skills, the new gameplay showed a pawn with the Woodland Wordsmith skill, which allowed them to interpret Elvish. So then, when the player character comes across this elven NPC with a side quest, their pawn can interpret the language and allow them to communicate. And when it's time to draw swords, pawns are great to have at your side too. While some vocations are exclusive to the main character, you can select many of the others for your main pawn, and these can be switched out too. And then you hire two pawns with vocations to match your needs, so getting a fighter if you need a tank, for example, to round out the party. Of course, the role they perform depends on the vocation they have, but pawns can offer some general assists too, like catching you when you fall from a flying monster, for example. So while the game is a single player RPG, your pawns will almost make it feel like you're playing co-op with some very helpful friends. Although not everyone in the world of Dragon's Dogma 2 sees pawns as helpful. And let's talk about the world for a bit, as the second entry in the series takes place in a parallel world. So while it will mirror the setting of the first game in some aspects, it's not a direct continuation of that story, at least that's what it sounds like. The story of Dragon's Dogma 2 is centered around two kingdoms, the human kingdom of Vermont and the Beastren Empire of Batal. Vermont is your more traditional medieval fantasy kingdom, with a power struggle set in motion by the Queen Regent Disa. The Beastren live in more rugged lands with more dangerous creatures on the loose, and they blame their misfortune on pawns, so it will be interesting to see what happens when we come barging in with 3 of them in tow. Still though, both regions should have plenty of problems for us to solve, and the devs have even stated that they will offer a different gameplay experience as well. While we don't know the full extent of these differences yet, there already seem to be different modes of transportation in each region. In Vermont, players can ride ox carts to quickly get from point A to B, whereas the canyons of Batal are better traversed by using these cable carts. Don't put away your controller while riding these though, as you are still vulnerable to ambushes and attacks from enemies should they cross your path. A more traditional form of fast travel is also available by using a resource known as ferry stones, but exploring is of course half the fun in these open world games. You will need to plan ahead for exploration a little bit though, as the game also uses a dynamic day-night cycle, with the nighttime being a lot more dangerous. A big reason for this is the reduced visibility, so you'll need your lantern or spells to even properly see in front of you. But there are also unique enemies that only appear at night. I'm guessing that Gulahan I mentioned earlier could be one of those. But if you are able to keep yourself safe and have the required camping supplies on hand, then you can find camping sites where you can rest and skip the night. So you don't have to wait it out if you'd rather continue questing during the day. So while Dragon's Dogma 2 looks like your standard open world action RPG, there are a lot of unique mechanics at play that you don't really see anywhere else in the genre. I'm definitely excited for this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to not miss the next Dragon's Dogma video. Totally expect tips and tricks around release as well. A like would be awesome, and if you want, you can watch our previous video on the best open world games from 2023 by clicking on the screen. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.